everyone, my name is Justin. I'm joined by my fantastic colleague Mary. We're coming to you from MRT ACE Hardware and Garden Center in Port Charlotte, Florida. I'd like to thank the Charlotte Mid-County Regional Library for inviting us to participate in this video series. We're excited to see everyone else's videos, and we're happy to present some information to you today. What we're specifically talking to you about today is how to grow your herbs, and we'll talk a lot about spices. And being in Florida, it's very hot. And so we're going to give you the tips that you need to help make your garden grow year-round. So without further ado, I'll let Mary take over. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. I'm really excited about it. I hope it's helpful for everybody out there, whether they're a new herb gardener or whether they're a seasoned veteran. I hope we have something to share with you. This is a good opportunity for you to be thinking about a few questions to get started. For example, why am I going to be doing herb gardening? Am I going to be doing herb gardening for the wonderful flavors that it will add to my soups and sauces and stews? Am I going to be doing herb gardening because I want to attract butterflies? Are we looking at herbs for their aroma? Maybe there's one you want to bring in your home for the wonderful smell and calming effect it has. So that's one of the questions to think about. Another thing to think about is, are you going to start small? Are you going to have your plant in just a little pot? We have those here. Or are you going to go whole hog and plant your herbs in a raised garden? We have both here at MRT, and anywhere between those two sizes of things. We're going to talk about the things that you need to get started. For example, do you need a raised garden bed, or do you need a pot? Or we're also going to talk about the ingredients that you use to pot your herbs. We have potting mix, we have fertilizers like worm castings, which are very good and organic. We have various different kinds of potting material here. We have all kinds of little accessories you can use. We have tags that you can use to identify. You know what they are when you put them in the ground, but 2 months later, 2 weeks later, you might forget. So we have nice little tags you can put in your potted plants to say what they are. Start small with little pots like that. So we have anything from the small little guys, medium-sized pots, all the way up to in-the-ground gardening. And we can talk about what it takes to do all of those. So that's what I intend to cover today, as well as some of the characteristics and qualities of the different kinds of herbs. Oh, I almost forgot. Maybe you're even thinking about hydroponic growing of herbs. We have kits to get you started with that as well. So that's with just a liquid nutrient for your plants. Yeah, basil is a great plant. It's very popular down here. It's one of our best sellers. We have a particular type of basil called Amazel basil. And it is what's called a proven winner, which is a plant source that these guys have been tested. It's a copyright. They just tend to do very well. And Amazel basil is one of those. We typically get those in 6-inch pots, so they're a little bit more established plant. Basil is the tomato, the pizza spice. You use it a lot for your pizza. You use it for Italian dishes, and it grows very well. As far as the lighting requirements for basil, about 6 hours of light minimum, and they, like everything else, are probably going to prefer the morning light. Just pinch it off and add it right into your soups and sauces. So one of the plants that we have that likes the summer is mints. We have a tremendous variety of mints. You wouldn't realize it, I certainly didn't when I first started here, that there are so many kinds of mints. There is regular mint, there's spearmint. One of the very popular ones is chocolate mint. I've even had customers come up and say, here, chew on this leaf, you'll be amazed. And it does, it tastes like those little green and chocolate candies. It's really good. So these can be used for a number of different things like teas and to accent the flavor of different items. Mints, they grow very well. The thing to keep in mind about mint is, you can see this guy starting to take off on me. Mint will do that. It will grow and expand. So it's one of those plants that does well if you put it in a pot as opposed to in the ground. Don't be afraid to clip it back. If it looks like it's getting leggy and starting to take off on its own, clip it back. Keep it in shape. This is another 4.5-inch pot here. This is oregano. We have a few different kinds of oregano as well. I'm sure you're very familiar with oregano. Used in cooking a lot, it adds a nice flavor. You can put it in your salad. When you're harvesting your oregano or any spice, the thing to do is just pinch off the end and just use that. Pinch your herbs off fairly frequently. It makes them grow fuller and it keeps them from getting leggy.
And both of these are $1.99, $1.99 for both of these.
Now, it doesn't look anything like it, but this is its cousin, Cuban oregano. A little bit bigger. This is a 4.5-inch pot. This is a 6-inch pot, or what we call in the gardening world a 1-gallon pot. People sometimes say, well, that's not a gallon. Well, it's not like a liquid gallon like your milk comes in, but it is, for the agricultural world, that's considered a gallon.
Yes, and you can see the difference in sizes. This is $1.99 and this is $5.99. So the bigger the plant, of course, the cost does go up.
Right.
But we typically do sell herbs. This is our 2 most common sizes predominantly. So
exactly. And I didn't mention before, but if you're just starting out, we also have seeds of herbs that are available to start. Now, some herbs will take off from seeds easier, dill. Other plants, you're better off getting them from the nursery with a small plant size. Yeah. And here we have lemon balm. It's another herb that we have. It's used for spices. It's used for flavoring different things. A lot of these things you can just put in your salads, you can put in your soups. We have cilantro, which I don't have an example of here, but cilantro is a good spice to put in your rice. A lot of Mexican dishes will call for cilantro. An interesting thing about cilantro that I didn't know until just recently is as they grow up and flower and produce seeds, the seeds of the cilantro is actually what makes coriander, the spice. So that's where the difference between herbs and spices you might have a curiosity about. Well, herbs are the green plant leaf type things, some stems. Spices are made from the seeds of the plants, sometimes the roots of the plant, sometimes the bark of the plant. Cinnamon is a good example. It is made from the pods of a plant and the roots of the plant. Garlic, things like that, spices. But these that we're talking about today are herbs, where you're going to be using the actual green leaves of the herbs themselves. So as you're going through your herb gardening and it's growing very well, you might wonder, well, how do I take care of it? What do I do? Do I have to fertilize it? Do I have to trim it back? What about the sunlight? How much of that does it need? How much water? Well, herbs typically take a neutral pH. Somewhere between 6 and 7 is good for most herbs. They normally need about 6 hours of sunlight. Morning sun is always better. It's not as harsh. You wouldn't think about it, but that afternoon sun is really intense, especially for us and for our herbs. So morning sun is better, about 6 hours. But if you have them in pots, that gives you the versatility to move them around if you need to. If you see that it's just, wow, it's just looking a little tired, a little burnt, you can always bring it in out of the sun a little bit. Watering these plants. You want to check to keep the moisture level moist, but not soggy. They don't like to have their feet wet. So if they do that, they might get something called root rot. So be careful with that. But we sell a product here at MRT ACE. It is a moisture meter that takes all the guesswork out of that for you. You can just stick it down in there and it'll tell you right in front of you what the moisture is, because it might be damp on top or bone dry on top, but down inside where the roots are, it could be perfectly good or perfectly dry, even though it seems moist on top. We have them here. I want to say they're $8.99, something like in that ballpark. When you're harvesting your plant, like I said, you want to pinch off the ends. If you don't want to do that, we also have floral shears here and a variety of different shears here that you can use to get in there and clip around on your plants. Particularly like your mint, it might be starting to take off. Maybe it's a little more than you want to just do by hand. You can get in there and you can trim that thing up with your shears. Always a good idea to wear gloves, gardening gloves. So what do I feed my plant? How do I make sure it's happy and well nourished? Most herbs don't take a lot of nutrients. Put them in a good potting soil with some sphagnum moss and some worm castings, and they'll be good to go. But a little bit later on, you might want to put some fertilizer in there. If that's the case, more worm castings are good, and also fish emulsion. It's a liquid. This is a bottle that will go a long way because you only need about 2 tablespoons of this mixed in to cover 25 square feet. So this will do a good job on fertilizing your herbs. It's also organic and it's not going to burn your plant. The watering. Like I talked about, the biggest drawback I think with herbs and almost with any plant that we see here at MRT ACE is people love their plants to death. They want to water them, and then they water them, and then they water them some more. So that would be something that I would keep in mind. Don't overwater your plants. Get that water meter and it'll help you with that. We do have some seed packs here at MRT ACE, and we have some small pots here that you can start them in. You can put them in there with a little bit of starting soil and they'll take off for you. And then when they get big enough, you can transplant them to a pot or into the above ground gardening if you want to. All right, I wanted to show you this guy here. It's a moringa. Not a lot of people know about these, and it would definitely be worth your while to go out and do some research on it. It's a lot more than I can talk about just in these few minutes. But the moringa plant has been around for a very long time. It's been used in medicine for a long time. So go out and research that. It's also a plant that you can pull the leaves off of and you can make them into teas and different things like that. So if you have any questions or if you want further information about these plants, the library is a great source of information. They have DVDs that you can get and they deliver them, they bring them outside for you so you don't have to go in, and they're a great source of information. So we have talked today about what do you need to do to get things started? What do you want to grow your herbs for? That's an important consideration when you're planning your journey with herbs. We've talked about the different kinds, some of the different kinds of herbs we have. Things that come to mind are basil, that's a good one for cooking. Cilantro, another good one for cooking. We have an herb here that I like, and it seems to be quite popular, particularly during the summer, and it is citronella. A citronella plant is actually a cross between citronella and a geranium, and it looks kind of like a geranium, but it has that scent that we're all familiar with from citronella candles. A lot of people use it for insect repellent, which is another reason why you might want to think about herbs. You want to grow them to keep the noxious little mosquitoes and things away. Now what you do with the citronella plant is you just rub it on you, and it can help to keep the mosquitoes off of you. Another question people have about herbs is, are they annuals or are they perennials? And the answer is yes. Some of them are annuals and some of them are perennials. Mint is a perennial. It will keep growing and growing and growing. Moringa actually grows up into a pretty good sized tree, so obviously that is a perennial. Annuals are things that don't come back year after year, and a couple of the plants, the herbs like parsley, would be an annual.
Well, yeah, and also in our area, people tend to use rosemary as a hedge. You can use it as a low shrub or small hedge. So if you're ever looking for the easiest herb to grow, I'd recommend rosemary. It's something that grows, all summer long. It withstands heat. And I would say most people don't realize when they put a little rosemary plant in the ground that it's going to end up being quite large one day.